Magdeburg 1 year after the tragedy. Despite the attack by a madman, it was decided to organize a Christmas market. There is always an unpleasant feeling in your heart. When you walk around here, it is impossible to forget what happened. It's true. You always carry it with you. To ensure safety, the authorities are sending additional police units. They are installing barriers and roadblocks, expanding the surveillance network, and introducing anti-drone systems. There is a comprehensive security concept for the Christmas market in Magdeburg. In addition, the city has developed a concept for vehicle barriers to counteract car attacks, so security is a top priority. The police work closely with us, as do all security services. Exactly 1 year ago, a 51-year-old doctor from Saudi Arabia exploited a security gap and drove his car into a crowd of people. 6 people were killed and almost 350 were injured. The perpetrator was arrested and is awaiting trial. The organizers are convinced that lessons have been learned from this attack and that all fairs in the country have been made more secure. There is no such thing as 100% security anywhere in the world. It is impossible to achieve. However, I believe that we are quite well protected, including against threats from cars in similar situations. We have a lot of security measures in place here, and the police are well coordinated. However, not everyone is convinced by the authorities' optimism. Images of trucks running over innocent people can spoil the pre-Christmas mood. It's a different feeling than before. In the back of your mind, you are aware of what is happening, what you hear, and what has happened in other cities, and it is getting closer to us. On the one hand, the aforementioned security measures at Christmas markets are necessary, but on the other hand, they significantly increase the costs of organizing such events. Some German cities have had to give up their traditions because protection against potential terrorist attacks was too expensive, and the threat is still real. A week ago, 5 men from Morocco, Syria, and Egypt were arrested at the Austrian-German border for allegedly planning an attack on one of the Christmas markets. According to the current state of the investigation, the suspect, a 56-year-old Egyptian citizen, allegedly called for a vehicle attack on a Christmas market in a mosque with the intention of killing or injuring a large number of people. The alleged attacker's motive was said to be Islamic extremism. More and more Germans see that the open-door policy promoted by former Chancellor Angela Merkel was a serious mistake. Currently, according to a survey, more than 3/4 of Germans want to tighten migration policy. The problem is that after accepting several million people from the Middle East, it is now virtually impossible to reverse this policy. Facing a crisis on the front lines and a political crisis, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky arrived in Warsaw, Poland. Yesterday's meeting with Polish President Karol Nawrocki was dominated by topics related to security and the chances for a ceasefire in the east. No grand promises of further financial support for Ukraine were made at the presidential palace. Instead, there was a concrete discussion between allies. Zelensky's visit to Warsaw could not bring about a major breakthrough in Polish-Ukrainian relations, because Volodymyr Zelensky himself has political problems in his own country. If there were a ceasefire, which Ukraine needs, elections would be called, and if Zelensky ran in those elections, he will lose. We also have a crisis in Kiev itself, namely a corruption scandal involving the oligarch Timur Mindich, who is linked to Zelensky. Ukraine has problems not only with the lack of people willing to fight on the front, but also with how it uses the aid it receives. That is why the Americans are no longer sending any money to Kiev, only military and humanitarian aid. The EU is different, having just decided on a record loan. 90 billion euros will be transferred to Ukraine, and the citizens of EU countries, including Poles, will pay for it. We will get this money back from Ukraine, and Ukraine will receive this money to repay the loan from frozen Russian assets. This is our decision. You are nodding your head skeptically, aren't you? Just before Thursday's summit in Brussels, Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk argued that there was no question of Poles contributing to a new loan for Kiev, that it would be granted from Russian assets frozen by EU countries, including money belonging to oligarchs. But it turned out differently. Poles will also pay, and Donald Tusk announced that this was a success. We have good news. Good news for whom?
Pieniądze dla Ukrainy.
The money for Ukraine was supposed to come from frozen Russian assets. Donald Tusk talked about it. Other European leaders talked about it. Meanwhile, we are dealing with a joint loan, of which we are also a part. And this is to be transferred to Ukraine. Tusk says it's a great success, but no one consulted the public about it. The public, which made a tremendous effort during the war in Ukraine, this Polish aid, in every sense of the word, was and is enormous. Therefore, this should be the subject of public debate. Poles have done the most for Ukraine, while Germany sent 5,000 helmets to the front. Poles took in millions of Ukrainian refugees. But after the December 13th coalition came to power, no one asks the Polish Prime Minister for his opinion anymore. Others take care of their interests. Only 3 countries have secured exemption from liability for these loans, which we expect may never be repaid. These are the Czech Republic, Slovakia, and Hungary. Unfortunately, Poland is not among them. At the same time, Poland has a budget deficit twice as large as Ukraine's. Polish institutions are unable to make transfers to institutions such as hospitals or other entities that should normally pay salaries and carry out investments. So whose interests is Donald Tusk looking after? Why is he taking out another loan for Ukraine on behalf of Poles in the face of the enormous aid that Ukrainians continue to receive from us? Tusk has completely ceased to matter in the European Union. He has led to the degradation of Poland. Berlin and Brussels are making deals with Moscow over Poland's head. They are protecting Russia's assets and paying Ukraine with Polish taxpayers' money. This bodes very ill for our future and our security. No one is saying that Ukraine should not be helped at all. We have been doing so since the first day of the Russian invasion of our neighbor. It is important to maintain proportion. The priority should be the security of Polish people. Brussels has already felt the wrath of farmers this week, who came to make it clear to European leaders that they will not allow years of their work to be destroyed. We as farmers from Opole, Poland and Europe are not afraid of fair competition, but today we are condemned to unfair competition. Fertilizer from Russia goes to Brazil and Argentina, and then we import wheat and corn from there. We cannot use cheaper Russian fertilizer. As the farmers say, they have sent a clear message to the President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen. She can no longer play games with European farmers. Today, farmers from all over Europe are here, and these protests will certainly spread to the member states. The protests are already spreading to the member states. Polish farmers are organizing a nationwide protest before the end of the year. As Polish farmers, we demand that the Sejm of the Republic of Poland adopt an unambiguous resolution that will oblige the Polish government to firmly oppose the EU-Mercosur agreement. Following the example of France, the Polish government has a duty to defend the national interest and not to agree to solutions that destroy our agriculture. Therefore, we can call for a joint nationwide protest on December 30th, 2025. We propose a form of tractor and agricultural vehicle stops on roads and overpasses with heavy traffic, with visible posters and slogans saying, "Stop Mercosur. We are not blocking traffic. We are showing our presence." Unity and strength. Farmers are demanding decisive action from the Polish parliament. Law and Justice reminds us that a few years ago, plans for such an agricultural agreement were successfully blocked. In 2019, we were also very close to signing an agreement with Mercosur. France, Belgium, Ireland, Poland. Mateusz Morawiecki built it then. We blocked it, we suspended it, and nothing happened for several years. Now they have accelerated, and what's more, it turns out that other countries are also beginning to have doubts. France, among others, opposes the agreement. The European Union-Mercosur trade agreement is an outdated, manipulated agreement that offers no protection. Therefore, in its current form, it is unacceptable. Many European Union countries support it. As it happens, there are 27 of us. France is loudly leading the resistance and is not alone in this fight. When France talks about the lack of protection for farmers, the words of the Polish Prime Minister may come as a surprise. If the Mercosur version that we currently have on the table comes into force, it is already largely safe from the point of view of Polish farmers, but also Polish consumers. Before the elections, the government passed a resolution saying that they did not like Mercosur, but that was only for the sake of the elections. Now that they could stand up for themselves, because there is a blocking minority with only Poland missing, the Prime Minister says that this agreement is good after all. Politicians from various parties see the need to block the Mercosur agreement. We must try to block Mercosur and, in the worst case, negotiate terms for Polish farmers so that agriculture in Poland does not collapse. South American countries will fight for the signing of Mercosur, putting pressure on EU officials. According to Ursula von der Leyen and Antonio Costa, there is no possibility that France alone will not agree to the agreement. The agreement will be signed. We will press for the implementation of the objectives for the good of our Mercosur and for the good of the development of our countries. For now, the signing of the agreement has been postponed until January 12th next year. Ursula von der Leyen has already expressed her conviction that it will indeed be approved on that date. Precise strikes in dozens of locations in central Syria. The U.S. military struck ISIS infrastructure overnight using fighter jets and helicopters stationed at bases in the Middle East.
2 hours ago, we hit the ISIS thugs in Syria who were trying to regroup after their decimation by the Trump administration. I ordered a massive strike on the terrorists that killed our 3 great patriots last week. 2 soldiers, 1 interpreter, all great people. And it was very successful. It was precision.
The surprising and surprisingly strong American attacks in Syria are a response to the killing of 2 American soldiers and their interpreter by ISIS a week ago in Palmyra. It was the first such incident since the change of power in that country in December last year. We are striking very strongly against ISIS strongholds in Syria, a place soaked in blood, which has many problems, but one that has a bright future if ISIS can be eradicated. The government of Syria, led by a man who is working very hard to bring greatness back to Syria and is fully in support. ISIS is now the common enemy of the United States and the Syrian government, which is trying to stabilize the situation in the country. This will be helped by the permanent lifting by the U.S. Congress of sanctions imposed on Syria during the time of former leader Bashar Assad. Today is the first day that Syria is free from sanctions, thanks to Almighty God, and then also to your efforts and patience over 14 long years. Special thanks to President Donald Trump for responding to the appeal of the Syrian people. The lifting of sanctions is a symbol of change in Washington's policy towards Syria. A former enemy becomes an ally and can count on support. It opens the way for foreign investment, which in turn provides an opportunity to stabilize the economic situation and lift the country out of extreme poverty.
Syrians have made great strides since a year ago, but serious obstacles remain. The government of Syria has restored state institutions and begun to integrate armed factions under a single command.
Despite tensions on the horizon, there is also a chance for peace between Syria and Israel, despite the difficult conditions on both sides. Among other things, Israel wants to disarm paramilitary groups operating close to the border.
The immediate creation of a demilitarized zone stretching from Damascus to the existing buffer area, including across Mount Hermon and its summit. This is the minimum needed to prevent escalation. Israel prefers stability. Israel prefers peace, but our security is not negotiable.
The Americans are planning to open a military base near Damascus, which would be a symbol of a new alliance and part of an agreement between Syria and Israel.